Good afternoon, Bruce Wilcox with ID. Pardon me. What you have before you is the final action on a negative declaration and findings for Red Hill Bay. That's a project we partnered on with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The comment period closed a couple of weeks ago. We did go to Calipatria and present to their to the city council. They were very receptive. We got 2 comment letters back, one from the county, which was very supportive, one from Department of Fish and Wildlife, State Department of Fish and Wildlife, that had some issues that they wanted to have us deal with in the permit portion of the project. Has no effect on the negative declaration. So we would ask for your action today to approve that so we can finalize that, so that we have another grant application and we need the CEQA documentation finalized in order to get that grant application.
Is there any discussion or comments?
I make the motion to approve, please.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a quick question, and it came to my attention that this is the hottest geothermal zone, and IID is the property owner. Is that correct?
IID is the property owner. Part of it is leased to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the rest of it isn't leased to anyone. I think at this point, Cal Energy holds the underground lease. I think that comes up pretty soon. But Cal Energy's been a partner in this, and it'll be built so that there's 2 set-asides where they can put well heads or well drilling rigs and drill in under the bay to get to geothermal if they decide to develop that. In a lot of ways, this project is a proof of concept for the Salton Sea Restoration Renewable Energy Initiative.
Okay, so this would allow geothermal development within that area, and it wouldn't preclude it in any way?
The only way it would preclude it, and it's already precluded because the lease with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Sonny Bono precludes surface entry. So you wouldn't be allowed surface entry in the habitat areas, but we're designing it such that there are set-asides around the habitat areas so they could put a well rig there and drill in under it. So they say they can drill in underneath about 1/4 mile, so it's set up so that they could do that.
As the guys that used to steal oil from the neighbors, it's called slant drilling.
Well, I guess I would just ask that you work with the geothermal companies, because I'm kind of surprised they didn't comment on this. They probably feel that their comments might have already been addressed.
They did. We met with them several times. Cal Energy has been really great on this project. They could have said no, but they didn't. They worked closely with us. We adjusted the design a couple of times. And the last meeting we had with them, they were very satisfied. Okay,
very good. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, ask for your vote.
I'm CEO for the County of Imperial, and I want to thank you for this opportunity here to speak today. I'm not going to take much of the time. I'm not going to repeat what Kevin had indicated or what Kevin had spoke to this morning, but I do want to remind this board, back in March when I was here, I spoke to this board about the impacts that the exposed ply would have on the community, on the people, on the County of Imperial. At that time, we spoke a little bit about the public health impacts. As you probably remember, we had about 8 or 10 people come up here and talk about public health, the impact that lack of action would have at the sea. We also spoke a little bit about our agricultural community down there and how our $2 billion agricultural economy would be impacted tremendously by lack of action, by exposed plaza, by the emiss of dust. It's been nearly 6 months, and quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, not much has been done. And without some clear and meaningful oversight of a plan, any plan, and some firm timelines, enforceable timelines, and if that's not done very soon, any plan out there would be difficult. It would be difficult for any plan to have success. We need to move now. We're 6 months closer to that deadline, and as Mr. Kelly indicated, that we are seeing more exposed ply out there for whatever reason it's happening. We call upon this board right now to take some action to move forward. Without that, the County of Imperial and its Air Pollution Control District will be left to enforce its air quality rules, regulations on each and every landowner in that area. It's not going to be good. We don't want to be put in that situation. We're good at it. We've done it. We have a very capable APCO down there. and we work very hard at our enforcing air quality rules. We're aggressive. We're aggressive in every respect because we have to be. Our PM10 right now, and since 2003, we've had to have a SIT plan put in place to deal with our, we were in non-attainment for PM10. So we do it. We're very aggressive down there. It's very important for us to enforce our air quality rules down there. We don't want to have to do that now. With your help, and this board can take action, with your help, we can avoid that.
Thank you.
The next year, we signed a historic MOU with the county. Once I got on the board, we settled lawsuits related to the QSA, and we had one common goal: developing a realistic salt and sea restoration plan. Much has happened since that signing of the MOU. Although there's still much work to be done, it feels like we're finally making some progress. And I want to thank you all for being here today. There's been at least 3 ceremonies that I've attended here, and I hope to attend many more. And maybe someday the county will pitch in and build us a convention center out here. Inside joke. For those who call Imperial or Coachella Valley home, groundbreaking today is important because it's a first step in realistic restoration. It's a first step at Red Hill Bay because it's significant. It brings together partnerships, federal, state, local, and I applaud all of you that made the efforts to get here today, especially Jennifer. Thank you. There's been several times when she was scheduled to come and either the plane didn't make it or the weather, but this time she had no excuse. I understand yesterday the tent blew away, so there were forces at work, but we still managed to show up. You heard earlier the salt and sea water will be used in this project. It will be a blend of salt and sea water, having a saline habitat along with the Alamo River, which many of you saw on the way in. That is agricultural return flows. Once built, this project will be closely monitored along with the IID and other federal and state staff, and really will guide us in the future for projects here at the IID. This is a critical first step project. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the IID. We are a proud partner in this project. The staff that are here today are very dedicated to it. We have many here, and I won't name them all, but I want to say thank you, Bruce. You kicked off this project along with other IID staff on the startup side of it when you were at the IID. And now I want to introduce Graham Donaldson, who's hiding in the back somewhere. He is now heading up the IID's efforts at the Salt and Sea City.
Good afternoon, President Galindo, members of the board. I bring to you the Master Work Agreement proposal for Red Hill Bay. We've basically been working through this project for a period now. It started off quite a while ago, and I'll get into that in a second. Basically 420 acres of shallow habitat, basically for shorebirds, nesting birds, and basically birds within that range. It's a partnership between U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Sonny Bono Wildlife Conservation Board, and Imperial Irrigation District to create shallow water habitat in the area of exposed and dried playa, and also along with basically decreasing the fugitive dust during wind events. The agreement first was put in place in August 2010, basically had initial sunset date of August 2015, and has been extended to August 1st, 2016. So fully permitted, ready for design. This first phase of the project, of which the Master Work Agreement applies, is in regards to the engineering, the design for the saline intake, Alamo River pumping station, irrigation structures, the mixing station, and the electrification stroke power for the project. Also on top of that, we will get cost estimations for each component of the project and the overall project cost, and along with the burn rate through the construction period. Also on top of that, we will get the project timeline from commencement of construction all the way through to completion and operation. Project timeline just now, is fairly tight because we did not get an extension to the agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. It still has a sunset date of August 1st, 2016. But having said that, we have the ability to get this initial phase 1 done and completed and meet the timeline. So from there, we can use this first master work agreement details and work on towards the construction RFP with the intent of being in construction before the end of the year. Project financials. This project is basically 100% covered under the cooperative agreement with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And albeit that IID would initially lay out the monies, that is fully cost recoverable, and also it is within the 2016 IID budget under the transfer O&M mitigation, J6, to the value of $1.8 million. Basically, the staff recommendation is that, as well as bringing it to the board for information, that it be approved today so we can actually move forward with the design and engineering of the project in order to meet the deadline of August 1st, 2016, and then allow us to work towards the construction RFP.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Did you have a question, Director?
Yeah, Graham,
Yes.
Graham, you're relatively new here at the IID, and you've been a welcome addition, picking up the progress on these projects around the Salton Sea and other activities. This is a legacy project that was worked on before by Bruce Wilcox when he was here.
Yes, it initially started in basically August 2010.
And is this the first project that you brought to the board for an MWA?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And Graham, on page 110, it talks about some financial expenditures in the year 2015 and 2016. And we're in 2016, and we got our backs up against the wall on this project. But is that a fairly accurate number on the engineering, design, and cost for 2016 of $191,483?
Yes, it is.
And have we expended all that already? Or are we?
No, nothing has been spent until we have board approval. The intent is to basically utilize those monies for the design and engineering of the project. And again, that's fully recoverable under the agreement we have with U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Okay, and then for 2015, there's $12,545 for project management, so that has been spent?
That has been spent. That was basically spent, as I say, last year in terms of IID labor costs. That only came to light recently when we started putting this project together.
And that was with board approval?
I don't believe it was because there's no MWA. There was no agreement to spend those monies.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham.
That's what put it over, right?
There was no budget or allowance. Those monies were spent. What I'm basically doing is consolidating that, making sure that they are covered under the master work agreement, and also to make sure that we track the costs very closely and come within budget.
Yeah, thank you for cleaning that up. Will those be recoverable?
I'm sorry?
Will we be able to submit those costs there?
We will have full 100% cost recovery. The other component about this project is typically with these grant projects, you wait until the end of the project and then submit your invoicing. Now that can be fairly high in terms of cost. The intent here is that we will make progress invoices to the state and be billed in a more timely manner as opposed to waiting till the end of the period, then invoice.
Well, this is the first of many projects at the Salton Sea, Graham, and your first voyage also for MWA, so good luck. We look forward to working with you in the future.
I look forward to bringing back many more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments?
I got a question.
Director Hanks?
How many bids did we receive on this?
How many what?
Bids?
How many?
Bids.
Yeah, engineering bids.
We had 3 bids on this time. There was a prior bid process that took place in August 2015. I think there was 3 bids that time. The cost came in over $210,000. And basically when we picked up the project, we looked at those bids that were high. And also from the standpoint, the conditions have changed at Red Hill Bay, so we rebid. And again, there was 3 bidders came in.
Is this the lowest bid?
There were 2 bids were very close to each other, and we took one of those bids after evaluation, yes.
So, but is this the lowest?
No, it wasn't quite the lowest.
Okay.
Is this the lowest best bid?
I'm sorry?
Is this what they call the lowest best bid?
It was a selective RFP, so we had the ability to look at who gave the best value for the project within the timeline.
Any other questions, Director Hanks?
Were they all local bidders?
Yes.
May I ask what the difference was between this and the low? Or no, you know what, maybe that's confidential.
In dollar amount, you mean?
Well, yeah, but that may be.
Let's just say that was a full evaluation team put together, and we basically went through a ranking process and came up with the optimum bidder for the project.
Are there any other questions? Director Hanks, you're done?
No.
No. He said he wasn't done.
Are you not done, or you are done?
Oh, I'm done.
Oh, I said, are you done? And you said no. I beg your pardon.
I haven't
Okay.
voted yet.
Okay, Director Hanks is almost done. Will you please vote? And you have 4 yes, and Director Hanks voted no. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, board members and Chairman Marcus. I appreciate the time here today. I'm here on behalf of the County of Imperial as its CEO. I offer the following with regards to the report on Solid Sea projects. While I truly appreciate the efforts made in the development of that report, including those efforts of the Natural Resources Agency and other stakeholders, quite frankly, the project implementation dates reported simply do not meet expectations. I sat earlier today reviewing some of my notes from past meetings and began thinking about the Solid Sea Task Force Agency Actions document released last October. One of the task force actions asked the Natural Resources Agency to accelerate project implementation and delivery. As Assistant Secretary Bruce Wilcox stated earlier today, we need to get something done now. That's a direct quote. We couldn't agree more. The county couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, we don't see it here in this report. Although perhaps defined as shovel-ready, the projects failed to meet the Sea's immediate needs. The report identifies the earliest project construction start date as the last quarter of 2016, and that's the Red Hill Bay project that only covers 420 acres. The next project is the Species Conservation Habitat Phase 1, and that project covers 640 acres, and that has its challenges and is expected to begin construction in the first quarter of 2017. Far behind the reported start date of actually this month, April of 2016. And by the way, these aren't new projects. These projects have been in the pipeline for some time now. And I'm not saying that as a criticism, I'm saying that as an acknowledgement that these projects take time. They really do, and we know that. But we still need immediate action at the sea.
Good afternoon, President Kern and board members. Graham Donaldson, Program Manager, Salton Sea Initiative. I'm here to give a brief presentation on the Red Hill Bay project, amendment number 1 to project number 100556. There we go. Basically, of April last year, major work authorization was approved by the board in regards to the design engineering for the Red Hill Bay project with Dynamic Consulting Engineers. And very early on in the project evaluation, we saw a number of issues, challenges with the project that would compromise the durability and the reliability of the project. So very quickly, we jumped on that as a complete team, Dynamic Consulting Engineers, and IID staff, we looked at the project and thought, we're going to have to do something differently here. So what I did was to put two little slides together to show you what the project was like originally. And one of the major concerns was in regards to the water feed to the habitat. Originally, it was 420 acres, shallow water habitat with a deep end of about 3.5 feet and the shallow end of about 1.5 feet. The issue being was as the sea recedes, which is going to be about 0.5 mile every 5 years, the feed of the water, the saline water to the project was via an open feed channel, which by itself is not an issue, but the challenge was, as the sea recedes, that channel would have to be extended and also deepened. And it was just an earthen channel. So that was the major part of the issues that we had with it. And then the second one was in regards to the freshwater feed. There was no filtration of sedimentation. So now we looked at the project and then, no, we had to change it. So within that same time frame, basically May, June, and July, we re-engineered the project to what you see there. It's 100% engineered and designed. And instead of using open channels, it's basically a force main feed. So it allows us for a lot more flexibility in terms of, as the sea recedes, there is a jack-up pump barge that is just offshore. So as the sea recedes, there are additional sections of the pipe, and the power main supplies that, so the barge can be moved out further into the sea to supply the water to the habitat. On top of that, the project, as I say, was 420 acres. When we re-engineered it and looked at the overall acreage, we were able to come up with 530 acres. And then on top of that, you see the outer rim, the shaded color. There's 3 of them. These are 300-foot tolerance bands for geothermal exploration. Cal Energy has the subsurface leases for this area, and we worked with Cal Energy, and we basically came to an agreement that we will provide these accesses so they can actually get to the geothermal resource if and when they develop that region. So having said that, originally the NWA was $219,000. With having to re-engineer the project to the extent that we did, we utilized more IID labor, especially in terms of the surveying work, so we could create and do the full engineering required to make sure that there was no areas that we hadn't covered, to make sure we got the gradients right and the elevations right. And then on top of that, the other one was about $8,000 with regards to the IID energy power supply to the project. So the total came out to $245,000, just shy of 246, of which is covered in the 2016 water transfer mitigation O&M budget, and the remaining $4,000 is budgeted in the 2017 water transfer mitigation O&M budget. Now, approximately 93% of that is covered under grant, which means IID will not be out of pocket. Those are grant monies that will basically are garnered from the state to support this project. And to date, we've received $193,000 of grant monies to support the Red Hill Bay project. So, in summary, I'm basically looking for an administrative amendment to close out the engineering MWA, which is what we call the phase 1, and to pay one final invoice, at which time we will then regroup and towards doing the rest of the work. And hopefully I'll be coming back on a regular basis over the next few months to support the project into construction phase. So with that, the staff is recommending that the board authorize the amendment number 1 to the Red Hill Bay at the next regular board meeting.
Does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes the presentation.
Are there any questions from the board? Any from the audience?
Number 9, resolution adopting the Red Hill Bay Wetlands Restoration Project mitigated negative declaration.
Good afternoon again, Mr. President, members of the board. The Red Hill Bay Wetlands Restoration Project is a United States Fish and Wildlife Service project. IID is partnering with them. This project is for the Sunny Bono Salton Sea Wildlife Refuge. It is to provide wading and shorebird habitat and reduce the dust emitting from exposed playa. This project will mix both Salton saline water and Alamo River water. It's going to involve two shallow ponds that provide that habitat. We brought the draft mitigated negative declaration to you at the end of November for release to the public for the 30-day review period. That review period was from November 22nd to December 22nd. We received comments from Imperial County, Dogger, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. This final mitigated negative declaration includes those responses to those comments. In general, the comments were very positive, and of course, there's a lot of interest to see this project constructed at the Salton Sea. It will likely be the first real significant project at the Salton Sea. At this point in time, we ask the board to adopt the resolution approving the mitigated negative declaration for the project.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Coon, second by Director Salas to approve a negative deck. Are there any other comments from the board or questions? Any from the public? If not, please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. Before you today is Amendment Number 2 to the Major Work Authorization for the Red Hill Bay Project Design. The project is a partnership between IID and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to construct 621 acres of shallow water habitat on exposed playa south of the Alamo River. In 2016, the board authorized an MWA for dynamic consulting engineering to develop engineering design plans that included a saline intake, Alamo River pump station, berms, irrigation structure, and an electrical distribution line. Amendment number 1 covered additional funding to the close of dynamic consulting engineers contract and pay all invoices. This current amendment covers additional funding for the one-line electrical design added to the project, and these costs are proposed to be covered under the QSA JPA habitat mitigation. I also have Tom Anderson here from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to give a short update on the project.
Thank you.
Chris was unavailable.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Anderson, the assistant manager at the refuge. So we've made a lot of progress on the project. Mainly, we've come up with a new division of responsibilities with IID. We have identified all the remaining components that need to be put in place, and I guess the design's all done, and we've got contracts being awarded. And so hopefully, if everything goes as planned, we should be getting water in there about the end of, in about a year's time, I guess. So I'm mainly here to support Jessica and answer any questions you have about the project.
Board have any questions?
Well, I do appreciate, but did I hear that we're moving along with Red Hill Bay? I mean, I'm sure there was some milestones that we didn't hit, right? Or are we on track? Or
we are about 3 years behind schedule.
Okay, yes. All right.
Aren't you glad you dug that out?
Yeah. So we do anticipate, though, having water in there in less than a year.
Yes, and if possible, we might find other means to get some temporary water in there. There's talk of creating some surface roughening within the footprint of the playa and then putting water in those.
All right.
As long as it doesn't impact.